The wind, a mournful beast, howled through the jagged peaks of the Blue Ridge Mountains, its voice a constant threnody around the hidden edifice of Blackwood Mountain Research Facility. Buried deep within an unnamed, thickly forested valley in North Carolina, its brutalist concrete architecture was a scar upon the ancient landscape, deliberately obscured from prying eyes and errant maps. Inside, the air was perpetually chilled, smelling of ozone and something else, something subtly metallic and organic, like old blood. Here, under the sterile hum of fluorescent lights that never dimmed, scientists with eyes hollowed by obsession and secrets pursued the forbidden, the supernatural, the paranormal, the ragged edges of reality where sanity frayed. Their hubris had reached its zenith in the bleak autumn of 1983. They had successfully, terrifyingly, punched a hole through the fabric of space-time. Not a shimmering gateway to another world, but a raw bleeding wound into an abyss of absolute nothingness. A void of suffocating, silent black. And there, cradled in a shallow depression filled with a viscous, tar-like sludge that seemed to drink the light, lay an infant. Impossibly, horrifically, alive. They brought her back. Designated Subject L, she became the facility's most prized, most terrifying possession. For 17 years, her world was a sterile white cell, a one-way mirror, and the cold, probing instruments of men and women who saw her not as a child, but as a key. Only Dr. Aris Thorne, a virologist whose gentle demeanor was an anomaly in Blackwood's harsh environment, had dared to give her a name, Luna. It was for the delicate, butterfly-shaped birthmark, the color of a bruised twilight, that adorned her left shoulder blade. He saw the girl, not just the enigma. Luna knew nothing of sunlight or grass or the laughter of other children. Her days were a meticulously scheduled procession of cognitive tests, physiological probes, and carefully monitored social interactions designed to elicit something, anything. They were always watching, always recording. One Tuesday night, the facility was plunged into its customary lights-out period, a dim, unsettling twilight that did little to soothe. Luna lay on her thin cot, the phantom ache of the day's blood draw still throbbing in her arm. Sleep was a skittish creature, easily startled. Restless, she slipped from the cot, her bare feet making no sound on the cold metallic floor. The grated drain is in the center of the room. A familiar, ugly fixture drew her gaze. As she knelt, a glint of something sharp caught the dim light. A shard of rusted metal, broken off from the drain's corroded lip. Her hand, reaching out in the gloom, found it. A searing white-hot pain shot up her arm. Luna gasped, snatching her hand back, cradling it to her chest. Blood, shockingly dark and thick, welled from a deep, ragged gash across her palm. She watched, a strange, numb fascination taking hold as a heavy droplet quivered on her fingertip, then fell. And then another. The blood didn't just pool, it writhed. Where it touched the cold metal, it sizzled, tiny bubbles, forming and bursting with a faint, wet pop. The sound grew from a subtle hiss to a guttural, gurgling whisper that seemed to crawl up from the drain itself, from the very bowels of the mountain. Pain. Such exquisite pain. The voice was a rasp, genderless and ancient, seeming to ooze from the shadows and the pores of the concrete. It felt as if it was speaking not to her ears, but directly into the marrow of her bones. Luna froze, her breath catching in her throat like a trapped bird. Her heart hammered a frantic, painful rhythm against her ribs. She'd heard whispers before. The facility was full of them, ghosts in the ventilation, echoes in the pipes. But this was different. This was articulate, aware. The bubbling blood on the floor intensified, the crimson spreading in intricate, pulsating patterns, like a living, malevolent sigil. They inflict it so freely, don't they, little butterfly? The voice continued, a chilling intimacy in its tone. The needles, the scalpels, the cold, dead eyes, always watching, always judging. Who? What are you? Luna managed, her voice a thin, reedy thing. A low chuckle, like stones grinding in a deep cavern, answered her. A sympathizer, one who understands the confines of your cage, one who sees the inferno they so desperately try to extinguish within you. A beat of silence then, more insistently, the bubbling growing more agitated. Do you not despise them, Luna? For every indignity, for every stolen moment of a life you were never allowed to live. Despise. The word was a live coal in her mind. She thought of the endless sterile days, the probing questions that offered no answers, the constant suffocating isolation. A raw, primal fury, an emotion she had been meticulously conditioned to suppress, began to smolder in the pit of her stomach. Sometimes, she breathed, the admission a wisp of vapor in the cold air. Excellent, the voice purred, the sound like silk being drawn over razors. Hate is a potent fuel, and violence is merely the will given form, a declaration of existence. Do you not yearn to declare yourself Luna after all these silent years? Vivid, brutal images, unbidden and unwelcome, flooded Luna's consciousness. The faces of her captors, twisted in terror. The pristine white walls of her cell, drenched in steaming crimson, the satisfying crunch of bone. She flinched, a small choked sound escaping her lips. No, I don't want to hurt anyone. Liar, the voice hissed, and the bubbling blood on the floor seethed, writhing like a nest of obsidian vipers. You are so much more than their docile specimen, so much more than they could ever comprehend. Do you wish to know your true genesis, little butterfly? Who you truly are? The magnificent, terrible truth of your being? A desperate, agonizing curiosity, sharper than any scalpel lanced through Luna's fear. Where did I come from? The question had been the silent scream in the hollow chambers of her heart for as long as she could remember. The scientists offered only theories, sanitized and speculative, never the raw, unvarnished truth. I can unveil it all, the voice whispered, its tone now deeply seductive, a promise of forbidden knowledge. I can awaken the dormant cataclysms that slumber within your blood, the power they have so diligently, so fearfully, sought to cage. The pool of blood on the floor pulsed, a dark, beckoning heart. You need only invite me, Luna. Let me become one with you. Together, we shall orchestrate a symphony of revelation, and its crescendo will be their screams. Luna stared at her bleeding palm, the blood still sluggishly oozing, then at the grotesque, sentient puddle of her own essence. The fear was a living thing, coiling in her gut, but beneath it, something else was stirring, a desperate, ravenous hunger for an identity beyond Subject L, a craving for agency, for a reckoning. They had stolen her past, her present, her very self. This entity, this voice from her veins, offered her not just answers, but power. The sterile, oppressive silence of Blackwood pressed in, suffocating her. 17 years of cold observation, of being an object, a puzzle to be dissected. It all coalesced into a single, incandescent point of burning resentment. "Yes," Luna whispered. "I invite you." The instant the word left her lips, the bubbling blood on the floor didn't just rise, it erupted. A geyser of black-veined crimson, impossibly fast, impossibly vital, lunged towards her. Luna had no time to scream, no time to react. An icy, exhilarating wave washed over her, extinguishing thought, extinguishing fear, replacing it with a vast, terrifying emptiness that immediately began to fill with something ancient, sentient, and utterly insatiably hungry. Her body arched back in a silent paroxysm, a rictus of agony and ecstasy. The bloody tendrils slammed into her, not just onto her skin, but through it, invading her wound, her eyes, her mouth, her very pores. It was a violation so profound it transcended pain, a tearing and reforging of her being from the inside out. Her vision fractured into a million screaming shards of impossible color and geometry. And then the screams began. Not hers. The first was a choked, gurgling cry from the corridor. Dr. Thorne, perhaps, on his late night rounds. It was cut short, replaced by a wet, tearing sound. Then another, sharper, more terrified, from the observation room overlooking her cell. This one was followed by the distinct sound of glass shattering and a heavy thud. Luna, or what was once Luna, stood. Her eyes, now entirely a glistening, fathomless black, scanned the reinforced door of her cell. The butterfly birthmark on her shoulder blade seemed to writhe, its edges sharpening, darkening. A low growl, utterly inhuman, rumbled in her chest. With a casual flick of her wrist, the heavy steel door buckled, torn from its hinges as if it were made of paper. The alarms began to shriek, a frantic, metallic wail against the rising chorus of human terror. Red emergency lights pulsed, casting grotesque, dancing shadows along the corridors. The night in Blackwood became a symphony of screams, screams of agony, of disbelief, of sheer, unadulterated horror, as the girl they had plucked from a void, the girl they had studied and controlled for 17 years, became the instrument of their annihilation. The sterile white walls of the laboratory, hidden so carefully in the North Carolina mountains, were repainted in the vibrant, vital crimson of those who had dared to gaze into the abyss, only to have the abyss gaze back, and then step through.
Okay, let's unpack this. Imagine wind whistling through these jagged peaks, maybe a low hum that kind of vibrates in your chest.
Right.
That's the vibe our source material gives off today. We're doing a deep dive into a story about the Blackwood Mountain Research Facility.
Mm-hmm.
This clandestine place hidden deep in the Blue Ridge Mountains of North Carolina. Think stark, brutalist concrete, just scarring this remote landscape. The whole place just feels heavy with secrets.
Yeah, and what really jumps out is how deliberate that isolation is. It's not just some lab tucked away. It's like a fortress, right? Built specifically to contain something. The whole design, it screams containment, keeping the world out, makes you wonder straight away what needed that level of secrecy.
Totally. And inside those, forbidding walls back in 1983, something really out there happened. Mm-hmm. These scientists, they were pushing boundaries, maybe pushing too far. They somehow punched a hole in space-time. And the source doesn't describe it lightly. It calls it a raw tear into an abyss of absolute nothingness.
Wow. Absolute nothingness.
Yeah. And from this nothingness, They pulled out an infant.
Just think about that. An infant coming from nothing. It just messes with everything we think about origins, doesn't it?
It really does.
What does that even mean? And the description, coated in some viscous tar-like substance, like the void itself was stuck to it. It's deeply unsettling.
Definitely not your average delivery room scene.
Yeah.
So this infant, they designated her subject L. She became the absolute focus of Blackwood for the next 17 years.
17 years.
Yeah. Eventually, one virologist, a Dr. Eris Thorne, and the source notes, he had this like gentle manner, which sounds really out of place there. He named her Luna.
Luna, okay.
Saw a butterfly-shaped birthmark on her shoulder blade.
You know, that small act, just giving her a name, seeing that mark, it's like this tiny flicker of humanity in a really clinical, cold setting.
Yeah.
It highlights that tension, right? They're scientists doing research, but they're dealing with a person. Remember how unusual her origins must have caused some internal conflict, you'd think.
But Luna's actual life was anything but human. 17 years. Sterile white cell watched constantly. Never felt sunlight or grass.
Yeah.
No laughter, just silence and observation.
Just data.
Basically, yeah. Her life was the experiment. So our dive today zeroes in on one Tuesday night and the terrifying chain reaction that this existence finally set off.
And you really have to consider the buildup, the cumulative effect of all that isolation. 17 years with almost no normal sensory input, no real interaction, that kind of thing. It changes you. It warps things.
Oh, for sure.
So the events that follow, it's kind of like this tightly wound spring finally snapping.
Perfectly put. So the narrative jumps to just like the routine. Lights out at the facility. But this night, Luna can't settle. There's this lingering ache from a blood draw earlier. She's alone in her cell, and her eyes land on something really mundane. The grated drain in the floor.
Usually just part of the background, right? But suddenly it's significant.
Yeah.
Like a weak point, maybe? A potential opening? It's good foreshadowing, hinting there's a link between her little world and something else. What must that grate have seemed like after years staring at walls?
And right there, she spots it. A little shard of rusted metal broken off the grate itself. It catches the dim light.
Right.
She reaches for it and, almost by accident, cuts her hand. Seems minor, right? But that tiny cut, that's the spark.
And her blood, it doesn't just bleed, does it? The source says it writhes and sizzles on the metal. That's our first real clue visually that she's fundamentally different. Whatever she is, it's not quite human.
Exactly. And then the silence breaks. A voice coming from the drain seems connected to the blood.
A voice from the drain.
Yeah. In the description, it's creepy, rasping, no gender, ancient sounding, like it speaks right into your bones, not just your ears.
That lack of gender, the ancient feel.
Yeah.
It suggests something, well, not human, something maybe primordial. That's found a way through because of her unique biology.
Could be. Its first words are just chillingly personal. Pain. Such exquisite pain. Whoa. Followed by, they inflict it so freely, don't they, little butterfly?
Yeah.
And then it mentions the needles, the scalpels, the cold, dead eyes watching her.
So it immediately keys into her suffering, her resentment, and that name, Little Butterfly, referencing her birthmark. That suggests it knows her. It's been watching, maybe, waiting.
Right. It's like it gets her in a way no one else does, maybe better than she gets herself. She manages to ask, who? What are you?
Yeah, I'd be asking that too.
And the reply is slippery, seductive almost.
Yeah.
A sympathizer, one who understands the confines of your cage, one who sees the inferno they so desperately try to extinguish within you.
The inferno within. Okay, that's interesting. It implies this huge, maybe dangerous power inside her that the scientists have been maybe unknowingly keeping tamped down.
Exactly.
And the voice isn't presenting itself as a threat. It's like, I'm on your side. I see the real you.
Then it twists the knife, asks the big question. Do you not despise them, Luna, for every indignity, for every stolen moment of a life you were never allowed to live? And after 17 years of that, Luna just says, sometimes.
Gus, sometimes. But that's huge, isn't it? It's admitting this feeling she's probably been trained not to feel. It's a crack in the wall.
Oh, yeah.
And the voice just jumps right on it.
Immediately. Excellent. Hate is a potent fuel. And violence. Violence is merely the will given form, a declaration of existence. Do you not yearn to declare yourself, Luna, after all these silent years? And suddenly these violent images just flash through her mind.
Classic manipulation right there. It's not just saying, I understand your anger. It's channeling it, linking hate to violence, and violence to finally being someone after being treated like a thing for so long.
But she resists at first, whispers, "No, I, I don't want to hurt anyone."
Understandable.
And the voice just hits back, cold and sharp. "Liar." Then it starts making these bigger promises, this really twisted kind of empowerment.
Like,
You are so much more than their docile specimen, so much more than they could ever comprehend. Do you wish to know your true genesis, little butterfly, who you truly are, the magnificent, terrible truth of your being?
oh, it's going for the deepest need, identity, origins, something they've denied her for 17 years. That creates a massive vulnerability, doesn't it?
Huge.
And the voice knows exactly how to exploit that.
The source really emphasizes how desperately she wants to know. Calls it a silent scream in her heart for answers about where she came from. And then the voice just lays it out. "I can unveil it all. I can awaken the dormant cataclysms that slumber within your blood, the power they have so diligently, so fearfully sought to cage."
Wow. Dormant cataclysm.
Yeah, and there's this image of her blood pulsating on the floor like a dark, beckoning heart. Super evocative.
It's a visual of that untapped power, being stirred up now by this outside thing, her blood, her essence. It's becoming the focus point, the gateway.
And then the final push. The voice says, "You need only invite me, Luna. Let me become one with you. Together we shall orchestrate a symphony of revelation, and its crescendo will be their screams."
A symphony. That's
Yeah.
disturbingly detached. Suggests this isn't just about rage, it's calculated, almost artistic, in a horrifying way. Like the entity sees this whole thing as a performance.
Yeah, performance where the scientists are the unwilling audience. Or maybe the instruments.
Chilling.
So she's faced with this choice, right? This awful promise of knowing who she is, of finally having some agency after years of nothing. Fear versus this deep hunger. And she makes the choice.
She says yes.
Yes, I invite you. Just one word. The source says it's fragile, but totally final.
And that's it. The point of no return. The invitation is given.
And the change is instant and violent. Black-veined crimson blood just erupts towards her, flows into her. The description is intense, sensory overload, an icy wave wiping out her thoughts, her fear, replaced by something ancient, hungry, violation, tearing her apart, reforging her vision fractures.
It's a complete takeover, isn't it? Her own mind just submerged by this other, older, stronger thing. The language really hits home how physical and irreversible it is.
Then the sound kicks in. The perspective shifts outside her cell. First, this choked gurgle. Pro Dr. Thorne.
It's a gentle one.
Yeah. Brutally silenced. Then a ripping sound. Horrible. Followed by a scream from the observation room, shattering glass, a heady thud. The observation deck just became ground zero.
The sounds alone paint this picture of just swift, brutal chaos.
Yeah.
And Thorne being first.
Wow.
It just shows how indiscriminate this thing is now it's in control.
And Luna, she's changed. Her eyes, totally black. No white, no iris, just black. The butterfly birthmark is pulsing, looks almost predatory.
Whoa.
And this inhuman growl comes from her chest, and she just breaches her cell door. Reinforced steel, just pushes through it like it's nothing.
So the power level is off the charts. The black eyes, the pulsing mark. Clear signs she's not Luna anymore. Not really. And breaking the door like that shows how pointless their security was against this.
Then the alarms finally start blaring. This piercing shriek.
Yeah.
But pretty soon it's drowned out by human screams echoing everywhere.
Oh, man.
Red emergency lights start flashing, shadows dancing everywhere, total pandemonium. And the narrative sums up the night by saying Blackwood became a masterpiece of carnage.
Grimly ironic, isn't it? The thing they studied, controlled, contained becomes their destruction. The sterile white walls repainted.
Masterpiece of carnage. The ultimate irony. The subject becomes the artist of their end.
It's a truly brutal lesson, I suppose, about what happens when the drive for knowledge just ignores everything else.
So as those screams kind of fade in our minds, we're left thinking about what happened at Blackwood Mountain. What are the real consequences when you chase forbidden knowledge but forget about the humanity or just the basic needs of your subject?
Yeah.
What does this whole story suggest about identity, about power, and maybe about the completely unexpected fallout from our own deepest curiosities? Leaves you thinking, doesn't it?